It's like when we share about often, our greatest heartbreaks or traumas, we're like right back in there, we're right back in this person destroyed me, this thing happened, and this is what it means. And it's so important to that, to that person in that moment to have that feeling, right? That feeling is probably so true and probably so scary and is so necessary to hold on to the intensity of. But with more time, there's the ability to put it into a different kind of context and to take a different meaning. And I think often to see what that moment also makes possible too, to see it as something that's generative of something that creates something rather than just something that happened to you, something that that marked you. And I know some of these are traumatic memories, but it doesn't have to just be that. I think that, yeah, we're often very set and this is what happened and this is what it meant, but it's, it gets to be, we get to tell new stories. We get, like you said, we get to tell new stories. And it's so liberating. And it's hard. It's so humbling. It takes, for me, it takes years with a single story to like actually take it through that whole process of actually finding that transformative power in it. That it's not just, I'm not just stuck in that place of this is what happened, where I actually realize it. But that's why it's so cool, because it also changes your life to have that different understanding and to really reckon with it. I feel really differently about, like, it really is kind of like wrestling with the angel. Like you really wrestle with it and you're changed by the experience.
Hello, Dream Talkers. This is a really good one with my new writing teacher, Aria. She is fantastic. I wanted to record a nice intro, but I haven't had a free moment to, so I'm doing it here. Excuse the background, excuse the my setting. She was in a beautiful setting, but I had some bad lighting in a kind of warehouse for the Zoom, but it was really nice. And we cover a lot of really cool stuff that we love talking about here on Dream Talking, and see it through the lens of writing, which has been a new, cool, creative endeavor for me, which we get into. Aria is a total badass, very deep thinker, and has just lots and lots of wisdom and beautiful golden nuggets to share with us throughout this. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Check out her website if you want to take a writing class with her, if you want to hire her to do some editing of your own stuff, and just see what she's up to. The website will be linked below this video. I'm also going to link my website. I don't think I've talked about this yet on Dream Talking. I have a nickbibeau.com now, which has some of the writing that I've been working on. I've been working on getting out a blog a week. So check that out. See some of my writing that I've been doing on all the topics that we discuss here on Dream Talking and a lot more. I also have a newsletter that I think a lot of you guys would love. Some of you are already on there, but if anyone doesn't know about it, I call it TQPQ, which stands for Thought, Quote, Poem, and Question. So every week I have a original thought that I came up with that week, a quote from somebody who's cool, a really nice poem, which is normally my favorite part of the weekly email, and a question to meditate on. So if you go to the website, sign up for that, check out my blogs, and definitely check out Aria and her website, and enjoy the Dream Talking. Till next time, peace. So in the realm of podcasting, my favorite form is the very like improvisational jazz form. Like the opposite end of the spectrum from NPR. I love NPR, but I can't do NPR. It's too produced. It's too much work. I like the lazy man's version. Like, hit record, real time, improvisational, duet, jazz, talking, conversation, and pretty reliably some magical things come out. Every time. So, and I know that you're just full of little magical nuggets too. So I know that they'll come out. I listened to your podcast with your friend
Oh yeah.
which was really fantastic. So as a podcaster, within the first 10 minutes, I was like, oh, this is going to be so easy. Aria's like a rock star. I don't even have to do much work. Because you again, so many cool gold nuggets in there. We'll dig into them
Thank you.
as we
That's
get going here.
no, that's very nice. I mean, I do have like a fear about like being repetitive. So like the fact that I've done like, do you have any thoughts about that? Of like, and now also knowing that you've heard me talk on a different one.
Yeah. So I'm familiar with that fear of being repetitive, and
Yeah.
it's funny that most of my favorite podcasters, my favorite, I call them like stand-up philosophers, like people that lecture just sort of real time. Are you familiar with Alan Watts by any chance? I don't know if I've mentioned him before.
So
He claimed that he coined the phrase stand-up philosopher. He's like, I just come up here and I've read 1,000 books and I just start talking and we'll see what comes up. And it's a little entertaining, but it's also more like what can we download in real time, right? And like what the Miles Davis, Coltrane jazz version of like, I'm going to play the same song, but it's going to be different this time because whatever the way the stars align, wherever I'm at, wherever the audience is at, all that kind of stuff. So you can tell the same stories of the last podcast, and I already know the energy and the flow and the music of it will be different this time around too. So that's sort of my take on the being repetitive. I think it's not the most founded fear. I think you'll be good. I think you could tell the exact same stories and it'll be cool.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
So starting with that, if I'll try to be a good host and I'll say, I have a dealer's choice. I'll give you two options. Okay. First, I was going to ask like a purposefully incredibly simple question to see what your answer would be. And it would be, what is writing to you? And alternatively, we could go the memoir route, and you can start at the beginning, which you started in the last podcast I listened to with your friend, and that was really good too. So dealer's choice.
Yeah, I saw that question on the list of questions you sent me, and I was like, oh man.
I knew it's kind of one of those so simple it could trick you up if I didn't give you a little warning. So
yeah, no, yeah. I like wrote down like a couple notes about that one, but like also, yeah, I feel like there's so many layers.
Yeah.
You do it right. That yeah, I don't know if starting there is the best.
Okay, well, maybe we'll see. We'll get warmed up, right?
Okay.
We'll play our scales, and then we'll see if we're ready to tackle something like that. Did you first encounter the creative process, and what sort of drew you to it?
Yeah, thanks. So it starts like many stories that I've heard from other people, which is just this love of creative expression as a kid. I think so many of us as children gravitate to expressing ourselves through drawing, through painting, through dancing, through making people laugh, through through making things up. Like that kind of imagination, that kind of expression just comes so naturally to children. And I think that that was really what I loved as a child. I loved in particular just like losing myself in drawing all the time, and making up shows and stories with my friends and putting on costumes. And it was something that brought other people joy. And so it brought me more joy. So it was something that I took to really naturally. It was also a distraction from the chaos of my family life. But it was a really organic kind of love. And I feel like for me and like for so many other people that I know, it's sort of that place that we're trying to get back to, of that just sort of unbridled joy and excitement and exuberance really for it, and for just the pleasure of making.
Yeah, yeah, that resonates a lot. And it's one of those like, um, if you do have a valley, a dark night of the soul in your
Mhm.
life, it's almost guaranteed that there's not much creative expression going on during that time in your life, whether it's teenagehood, 20s, whenever it is, right? Maybe it's decades for some people. Um, but if I, personally, what we were talking about before we started recording, these last couple of months for me, finding writing again, it's been like feeling like a kid again. Of like I have, because it's fun and it's like play. It's not as serious as my day job, keeping the lights on and, spreadsheets and, audits and stuff like that. It's fun in that kid way. And you're like, oh yeah, like I forgot that was even in here. Yeah. And you get those little hits of like, oh yeah, life is supposed to be fun. You're supposed to be in this creative process. Like just even 6 months ago for me, when I thought of creative, I thought of like, it just means people that kind of do things a little different or, you know, whatever. But like it's actually in the word, just creating something,
Mhm.
creating a story, just putting something down the page and sharing it with people.
Yeah.
And yeah, so with that as a frame,
Yeah.
what did you have a valley in between this being young and having so much fun with it and seeing it bringing other people joy and hitting a point where that sort of felt lost? What was that like and how
Yeah.
long was that?
Yeah, definitely. For me happened as soon as creating became something that had any pressure associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
It happened with kind of all the different mediums because I drew and I loved that, and I was really musical, so I loved singing and performing. I loved writing. And I can remember for each of them really distinctly the exactly what the moment was that it started. So
Oh
I'll tell you.
wow. Yeah.
For drawing, it was I was obsessed with drawing swans, and I would draw also like girls in dresses who never had faces. And it was very stylistic, and I just had this style and I just kept repeating it and repeating it. And my mom took me to the Art Students League because we lived in New York at that point, and they had us do figure drawing and draw real people, and also do still lifes and draw real objects that were right there. And I think I was 7, and everyone in the class was definitely a teenager. And my mom had pushed me, get me into the class because I was talented, blah, blah, blah. And of course, like after that, could not draw
Oh
again.
no. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
What a nightmare scenario.
Definitely. No, it was like, well, what do you mean I have to draw somebody who's right in front of me? And how do I do that?
Hmm.
It was, it was so many different things kind of colliding at once of this idea that I couldn't draw from my imagination, um, that there was a way to be drawing what was in front of me, and I didn't know how to do it.
Hmm.
And then 3, seeing everybody else around me knowing how to do it, and so comparing myself. So it was just like a kind of everything at once. So
Yeah. Yeah.
then art was off the table. And then for writing, my second grade teacher, who's super into, like, she was very encouraging of my writing and imagination and storytelling, but she thought I was an awful poet. And
Oh,
she told me
remember you telling me that? Yeah.
yeah. She
Oh
told me,
no.
um, you should stay away from poetry.
What adult can make
Yeah.
that assessment to a second grader? Like, you know
Mhm.
what? This one's off the table for you.
And
You know?
then later, though, I did get a poem published and I sent it to her.
Oh my
I
God.
had
Oh
left that
yeah.
school by that point, but um,
How old
I
were you when you got
say
your poem published?
um maybe like 14, 15 or
Oh,
something.
that's awesome.
But I like dreaded ever having to write poems, and still, it's still there. I still feel like poetry is something that, um, yeah, poetry is something I find very challenging to write and to feel like I can find myself in and find sort of my own, I can really trust kind of my own instincts around. And I wonder how much of that is still a little bit of residue from
Yeah,
Miss Yo-Cal in second
yeah.
grade.
Well, I
Um,
just want to take a second to recognize the badass that sent her published poem to the teacher.
yeah.
Do you remember her response? Did she respond? Did she
I
like?
think she did. I think she
Yeah,
did respond. And I think she, you know, I want to say that she was just very happy for me.
yeah.
I want to
Sure.
say that she did not apologize.
Oh, prove me wrong. Good job.
Yeah, I think she just saw it as a positive thing. She
Mm,
probably didn't remember that she had made that comment, to be
I'm sure.
fair, but
Yeah, yeah,
I will always, it's just amazing. It's amazing how any level of self-consciousness can so shut down the process. And
yeah.
that's true whether you're 7 or whether you're 70. Like it
Hmm.
doesn't matter when it happens. But when it starts early and you don't it takes a long time to learn how to really unlearn that.
Yeah,
Um, so it definitely took a long time to find that.
yeah. I would say, and wonder if you agree with this. It seems like there's particular, uh, really heavy self-consciousness around writing, more
Mm,
so maybe than other forms. Are you? I'm sure you're familiar with Anne Lamott,
mhm.
the writer out here. Yeah,
Forever.
yeah, Bird by Bird, and she does such a great, hilarious job of talking about the self-conscious,
Mhm.
critic that comes in as you write, and it's. I wonder. I would obviously you have way more experience and you teach, and so you've seen other students go through this. But I've been thinking like, is it that it's such a private thing that it's something you do by yourself, and then you go through all these, emotions and layers of stuff, and then you're like showing it to the world. It's so terrifying to expose yourself in that way. Whereas something like maybe music, um, maybe even visual art like painting or stuff like that, there seems to be a little bit of a some sort of buffer in there. The analogy that comes to mind is I listen to a lot of comedians do the podcasting, and they say that uh, music comedy is kind of cheating because people already like music, and so you can not be that funny, but because of the music, people can kind of like it anyway, right? So it's sort of like an unfair thing. And I think of like uh, the singer songwriters of the world. A lot of it is on the page not that great poetry, but you put it to the right melody and the right song. I think it was Jewel uh, was the one that was quoted of saying like my all my songs is just like eighth grade poetry, but it's just because I hit a good melody and rhythm that it sounds profound or whatever. Do you have any thoughts on that? The intimacy and the scariness of self consciousness of writing.
Yeah, I do. And first, I want to know what music comedy is because I've never heard of that.
Oh, okay. Well, Weird Al Yankovic would be probably the most
Mm,
famous one, but there's a
okay.
whole it's a whole genre. There's
Whole genre.
many. I could recommend some to you. There's a few real funny ones out there.
I would accept some music comedy in my life.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I do have some thoughts on it. I mean, what I find is that, it doesn't, I do think that there is something particular about writing, um, which I'll get to in a second, but I do think that this, I do think that the impulse to block creativity, um, is so deep and socially ingrained and so uh, just so complex and wedded with so many different things in somebody's life, that it doesn't matter what it is that they want to express. I think it's about a certain almost like really kind of keeping the channel open. I think a lot about it was in a letter um, to Martha Graham. I can't remember if Martha Graham wrote it or if Martha Graham was the recipient of the letter, but they talk about keeping the channel open. And that kind of is like what we've talked about with you, with your daily practice, and what it is to keep returning to it, and what it does to keep that channel open so something can actually come through.
Yeah.
So I think that part doesn't feel particular to medium. But I do think what I do see and hear about with writing in particular is that it's so connected to people's academic shame,
Mm,
to
duh. That's so
people's
obvious. I never thought of that. Yeah.
well, people's idea of writing is so tied usually to their early experiences of being in school. And writing is something that um, like I think that when people think of art and think of music, it might be possible to compartmentalize and to be like, yeah, those are creative arts, but writing we have to do,
Hmm.
writing you have to do in some form. And if it's something that your teacher, um, you know, something that you struggled with because of learning differences,
Hmm.
um, or just having a different root of things, or never really being taught it well, just even in just like how to express yourself on the page, just about something simple, or even about something, we think that writing about a book is simple, like that's how writing is taught, to write about books. But what I find is that it's so kind of absurd to teach people writing through writing about books, because they're different skills. Like you have to be able to, like, being taught how to read and how to really engage with a book and to really think about it, um, is a really different thing than writing about it.
Yeah.
And it's like we marry those two things together as if they're really obvious, but I think it would be so much more powerful if we taught writing through giving people a chance to write about what they actually care about to begin with. And then you work on clarity and expression, and really in people get to experience the how rewarding it is to really go through that process of finally being able to articulate something, that an idea that was in their head, or this figment of something, and actually have it be communicated to a reader. um, so I think those are some of the reasons why writing is different. I also think that language, we haven't, we usually use language like math, where we need language to be really precise. We need, we all need to be in agreement about exactly what I'm talking about when I talk about this lighter, that now
Hmm.
I'm holding up this little big lighter. Um, I need to be very precise with my language. I need to tell you exactly, the directions to go to this place. We all need to have the shared understanding of what something means when we're using language, and just in common day.
Hmm.
But when we're talking about writing, we're talking about really unearthing language from this deeper place, this sensory, feeling, sensing self. And that's a totally different process. And the results are really different, where we don't all have to take away the same thing. And the actual beautiful thing is that we don't. It resonates with us really differently. So those are some of my
Yeah, yeah,
thoughts.
beautiful, beautiful thoughts. I'm the whole time I'm thinking of your faceless, beautiful figures with dresses, right? And that, hey, this is when I see or imagine, you know, this beautiful woman character, this figure. This is how I see it, and this is you translating it. And at 7 years old in the writing class, they said, no, you need to make it look, you know, in a way that everyone in this room will agree upon it looks. And writing in an academic setting is that, like, you know, um, we're way too young to be able to fit that into our brain, and there's so much criticism of like, well, I know what I want to say, but I can't say it. I may have already said this to you before, but something that's been coming through to me a lot as I've started the writing practices. I like to think of there as like layers of reality or whatever, right? That there's like the most ethereal, like it's to me, it's like almost like a feeling, like even pre-feeling of this, like something, this sense, this ethereal. And then the first contact we get with it is like an actual sense feltness, like an emotion or a feeling. And then it sort of comes down a little bit more and it comes into a thought that might be an image or some sort of word, right, or language. And then from there, there's this huge transition of getting it from there to spoken word.
Mm,
And that's the phenomena of, I know it, but I can't say it, right? I have so much of
mm,
that with the guys that I work with. Like, I
mm,
know it, believe me, I know what I'm talking about. I just can't say it, right? And
yeah.
and we all have some sort of experience of that, right? Some people
Yeah.
are a little bit more, have the gift of gab, or a little bit more naturally able to talk, and others aren't. And there's, again, probably all sorts of history, social, academic, family situation, friend situation that informs all of that. And so as I've been doing the writing, I'm realizing the next huge leap is from being able to say it to put it on the page, right?
Mhm.
And that is, once it's on the page, there's something so concrete
Mm,
about, I'm handing this black and white, you know, uh, thing that started up here as this ethereal whateverness, and it came all the way down. And that's, we'll get into your writing from the body stuff, because that's really cool. I haven't come across any of that before finding you, and I think it's very profound framing for thinking about writing and just creative expression in general, is tapping into the body. But once it's on the page, it's like I'm seeing that next level of, if you think you know something,
mhm.
can you write about it? And in the process of writing about it, you'll be so humbled by the fact that, oh, I really don't know. And then the next layer of handing it, like the final layer is handing it to another person and
Mhm.
saying, okay, I went through this whole process of trying to get this down on the piece of page. Do you see it? Do you see this the way that I see it? And there's
Yeah.
where a lot of the vulnerability probably comes in again too. It's like, I went, and one thing you said, which I thought was really cool early on in the class I took with you, was you think that the story is fully formed in your head. You just got to get it down on the paper. And if you actually try to write a story, write a book, you realize really quick, no, it's the process of writing it is how you're going to discover it for yourself first, and then maybe move on to the next step of sharing it with other
Yeah.
people. So, okay, anyway, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, he said so many things that are so, oh, there's so much.
Good.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I think that, yeah, I definitely believe that the process of writing leads us to the story that we are seeking to tell. It doesn't, when we try to really approach it, like you said, as something already that exists in our head, and that it's just like a Google Translate or something, which I do all the time. I have a bilingual job, and I it is, I mean, it is magic, right? It does feel like magic to suddenly have this be, 98% intelligible in a different language. And I think that, like, what a what a fantasy that writing could be like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
um and I guess I'm really interested in what you're saying about the process of translating it between, um like how it moves between oral expression and on the page. And I think that's so interesting. I think that it is such a good point that, yeah, to move it from something that you can speak about to something that's on the page is really, it's really challenging. I think as we all have our different, the different ways that we're sort of wired in terms of how that circuit is, and
Mhm.
which places connect more easily than others. One of the reasons that I love writing, so I grew up, my mom was this child psychiatrist, so I grew up talking about my feelings all the time. I'm
Mhm.
very comfortable expressing myself verbally. And it's usually the first thing I want to do. When I'm feeling something, I want to talk to somebody about it.
Mhm.
And one of the things that writing has really given me, in the practice of writing, has been really carving out that space for me to be with that on my own first, and to really hold it as something that is mine, that's mine to mine, and to really be with and to understand in a different way. And then I find there's such pleasure in getting to talk to somebody about something that I have written about, um, because it feels like I've done that work of actually, yeah, understanding it for myself. And then I'm curious for you in what you've been doing with your writing practice. I know for me, it's completely changed all of my relationships,
Yeah.
having this space that I go for myself, really that room that I enter into, that's both a literal room, the room that I'm in right now, but also that room inside myself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
It means I don't need the same things from people. I'm not
Yeah.
looking to other people to have to, you know, make me feel special, make me feel interesting, make me feel like I have something to say. It means I get to share. I get to be discerning about what I share. I get to share because I'm excited about sharing it, or because you know, I actually have something to say rather than looking for that conversation to give me something to say.
Oh my God. It's so resonates in so many ways. That's really cool to hear you say that, because
Right.
that's been the exact experience for me.
Yeah.
Like literally some of the phrases you just say, I write to myself all the time when I'm journaling and stuff. One of it
Mhm.
is have something worthwhile to say. There's
Mhm.
something about like, so one of the things I think the writing, instead of just going and blabbing and offloading on someone, and there's a time and place to do that. I'm not hating on that. I'm saying in general, if you can sit and journal it and work it out and write about it first, you cut out so much of the junk, right?
Yeah.
So much of the excess. So instead of having this big, ball of clay, you can really cut it down to, okay, what really is the issue? And
Yeah.
doing that in your own space, like you said, can it's healthier for you. It's healthier for your relationships, for everything else. And then if you can go, I'm lucky enough. I have a couple of really good friends. One in particular, I talk to every day, damn near. We take the weekend off, but Monday to Friday, we are on the phone for about an hour, maybe a 30 minutes in the morning, 30 minutes at night. And I call him like my journal, and I'm like his journal, to where it's, but my relationship even with him has been so good, so much better since I started writing, because instead of
Mhm.
the ethereal bouncing around in that first phrase from the mind to the spoken word, I'm
Yeah.
getting it from, I'm going down all the way to the page first and cutting out
Mhm.
a lot of the junk and going, what I thought was 10,000 words about what Nick's going through is like 300. It's like bullet points. It's like
Mhm.
this, and it's funny too, because I haven't talked with you much about, I am very much into spiritual practices that are very practical for life, of like, handling, being a parent, being a friend, holding a job with a leadership role, all those kinds of things. And so there's a lot of like, um, getting things down to the practical answer in a way. And so many times the answer, I'll joke with my friend, is like, the answer is always be comfortable with not knowing, right? It's like one of my mantras is like, well, I got so much anxiety about this and that, and da da da. And I've talked to you a little bit. I'm really into Stoicism, Marcus
Mhm.
Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus. I read a lot of their stuff, and so often it's like, well, is it in your control or is it outside of your control? It's outside of your control. Okay, well then, make peace with the fact that it's outside of your control. Control what you can, and what you can so often is like, take a deep breath, chill, relax. It's like, no, that answer is too simple. I need to go save the world. Like, you can't go save the world in this moment, right? You can
Yeah.
take maybe one step in the right direction, mindfully, and this and that. So writing has been hands down the most powerful practice of getting to those simple answers quicker.
Mhm.
Yeah, without having to it be a verbal, you know, offload on other people, and like really going through it, and then it embodies and internalizes in a way that sort of is more sustainable, you know. And it's all like, I'll laugh at myself sometimes as I'm typing, you know, the same thing for the seventh day in a row. Like,
Mhm.
I am so freaked out about this. What's the answer? You know, be okay with not knowing. Okay, what's the next step I can do? And it's always very simple. You know, make sure you exercise a little bit, you get enough sleep, you eat right, you breathe, you relax. You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I
make
mean, I
it
think
so.
sometimes writing can really feel like a conversation with yourself.
Absolutely, yeah.
I can think of several examples, one specifically journaling, which for what it's worth, I put them in different categories, not because I
Mhm.
think anybody needs to put them in different categories, but they serve they serve different purposes for me.
Sure.
But specifically journaling, I can think of multiple occasions, like exactly where I was, exactly what was going on when that conversation to myself saved my life,
Mm.
of being able to draw out this you can hear that,
Is that
yeah?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Is that your pup?
No, it's the dog next door.
Neighbor. Okay, cool.
My dog is innocent.
Yeah, all right.
um that is Winston. um yeah, when like really like I was able to draw this wisdom that came from something inside of me. But I'm the one writing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Right? I'm the one writing, but somehow by the end of that, I was in a different place. And that holds true whether it's journaling or whether it's, um, the work that I consider more creative. And the distinction I think goes to something that you said of really that root of create. And when I'm journaling, I'm not trying to create anything. I take all pressure off myself. Um, when I am creating, I am not putting pressure on, but I am looking for that way to, like I think of Emily Dickinson's line about tell the truth, but tell it slant. Like, what is that way that I can just like twist the dial a little bit on this? And the best example I have is I often will write in third person. For my daily practice, which I hold as a creative practice, where so if I am so tired, I know that I will, if I was just journaling, I will just say, I am so tired, I want coffee, I don't want to go to work. And it's not gonna make it's gonna do something, but it's not gonna do what creativity does for me. So even just I've found saying she was tired opens up this whole new space where
Wow.
it creates kind of this launching off place for me to explore why is she tired. It's always a woman. Why is she tired? And maybe it is the same reasons I'm tired, but it takes me into this deep dive through this other person's body and life that might be incredibly incredibly interconnected with my own, but allows me to see it differently. Or maybe she's tired for a reason completely different than why I'm tired, and then it becomes this other story. But really just looking for these other ways to just to see my own experience a little bit differently, because I think as a child of a psychiatrist, I think I need that. I need to that like yeah, it's not pressure, it's just like a little bit of like a lifting out of that kind of baser way of relating to my feelings. I'm more sort of just being all in them all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
just like lift it
Absolutely.
up a little bit or see it a little bit differently, or just
Hmm.
like do something to change the texture.
Yeah, I absolutely agree and love with that. It's two different channels. You're talking earlier about, keeping a channel open or another channel, and two different practices. of the person. I joked with my friend, if anyone ever comes across my journal, because I type it, it sits in Google Docs, they're gonna kind of maybe think I'm a madman because I'm typing the same thing like every day, almost. There's a little bit of difference, but it's like he asks himself the same question every day and answers almost the same way at every. So that's definitely not as creative. It's more whatever, therapeutic, or like a practice, a spiritual practice, really. Whereas, yeah, the creative channel, and I think that was really, I want to highlight that distinction of I am tired, and then that's the channel of the practical journaling, creative, or therapeutic, and then go into the creative channel of she is tired, and then we can tap into that kid thing again of like playing, of like, I'm gonna tell a story about someone that, like you said, it's gonna be me, but just shifting it into, what if I could kind of pretend it was someone else, and explore that. And our mutual friend, one of my favorite people in the world, Elizabeth Carruthers, she often talks about how she knows that a character is good when it's like they're telling the story, not her, right? And
Yeah.
she's been writing for 30 years, so she's, at a different level than I'm at, but way different level than I'm at. But she's like it's like, it is literally a channel of like, this character wants to come through, and her job is to just transcribe, and she'll surprise herself all the time. And a lot of good writers, especially fiction writers, will say that they're like, I don't know where this stuff is coming from. I feel like I'm channeling it from somewhere else, and so that is. But anyway, I want to agree with your idea of it being two different practices, two different channels, and they both have great benefits.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing though. I think that they are different practices, but I actually think it's the same channel. Like I actually think that it all is coming from that same channel, which is about actually trusting that it's about trusting a certain worth. It's trusting that you have something to say. And I think even if, I think that people who are blocked there, who feel like they can't admit that they're feeling sad or don't know what they're feeling, altogether, that impacts their creativity. And then there are, plenty of people who are more comfortable with that, but don't, their worth still, or their sense that, that they have that freedom to be playful, to be imaginative, is that part of it is creative. But I actually think it's all really, really interconnected. I think that it is so much about this radical kind of, like the ways that radical self-acceptance is actually the same. It's actually the best way of getting to transformation. But it's like all about like both being utterly ourselves, which allows us to be completely different, like what you're saying with Elizabeth, of being able to hear these other characters. There's a way that the channel has to be really open, I think, in all sorts. So I don't know. It's an interesting metaphysical question, but I think that's how I think about it, at least.
Yeah, and I that actually resonates a lot. Like as soon as you said that, I could visualize seeing the way that how the two different channels are really connected, and they're coming from the same place. It instantly made me think of, I've met so many interesting people with amazing stories in my life. It's one of my favorite pastimes, is hearing people's life stories. The crazier the better. And I just think of like, what a shame on a level that they don't see how worthy their story is, right? And that block of not being able to put it down on the page, or even speak it and share it with the world in a way that, and like, if anything, the thing I keep thinking as you're sharing of what writing has done in your life is, if anyone out there, dream talkers that are listening to me, my audience, because this is a newer thing, they don't even really know. I took a year and a half off, and I wasn't writing back when I recorded most of these, so this is a newer frame for me. Like
secrets out.
The secrets out. Yeah,
Yes.
I have a website. Go look at my blogs. I've been sending them out to some of you guys. Like, it really isn't about like getting published or having or getting recognition that you're some fancy pants writer. Like if all you ever get out of it is the personal feeling, the personal liberation of I have something worthy to say, it's worth the work, it's worth the time, you
Yeah.
know. And if you really even start to like share it with the world and people are like, yeah, I agree, you have something worthy to say, then that's like icing on the cake. That's a bonus. That's,
Mm.
you know, a gift on top of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's so true. I think the two, the two things that keep me in it, are really that. Now, the first one is that ability to continually discover new things about my own life, about um, what about ways to see the world, about ideas I didn't even know were there, or feelings I didn't even understand were there. And I mean, with both fiction and with memoir, I mean, I think it's amazing to, when writing memoir, to discover that there are all of these other possibilities, to all of these stories that I thought that I knew. That is so cool. And that's where, again, that's, I think, where some of my like all the therapy that I've been in, both consensually and not consensually, like, where they kind of like come together of just
Yeah.
like, wow, those insights are so powerful. And not just what it makes me, you know, it gives me whole other ways to understand stories that I thought that I knew
Yeah.
about my life. And there's in memoir, it's so exciting to do that. Um, that process of really feeling for what is the story really about. And for me, like, I always start writing when I know several different things are connected, and it's very obvious to me that they're connected, but then I have to work for several years to like convince anyone else that they're connected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's so hard to get it like clear. Like, of
Hmm.
course they are. Like, I can feel how connected they all are, but to actually have that show up on the page and for somebody else to understand that. And which I guess
Yeah.
brings to the other point, which is the other thing that I love so deeply about writing is um that ability to connect with other people and
Mm.
to really there is something that sharing work does that is so profound. And it's not, as you said, because getting published is, needs to be the goal. Getting published in and of itself is not necessarily, um, doesn't necessarily give you that connection with other people, because it can be a very anonymous, anticlimactic
Yeah.
experience.
Hmm.
Because you actually don't know who's reading it. Um, but I liken it to almost like really like darkroom photography, where it, you have the negative, um, and you actually, to expose it to the light completely changes what it is.
Hmm.
It completely changes its experience of itself, and your experience of it and anyone else's experience of it. And I think that it's kind of like that with showing your work to people. It changes it. Um, and everyone will not have the same understanding of it. And there is, as you said before, that kind of calibration that, that happens. That can be both very painful, if you have somebody who really doesn't give you helpful feedback, or can be, even if you have someone who gives you helpful feedback, it could just be super frustrating. I'm just like, what do you mean you don't understand? But
You like it for all the wrong reasons.
right, it could be that. It could be that. One of my best friends is my favorite reader, and she just always, the first draft that I'll show to her, um, she'll just ask me so many questions about it all, and I'll just be so mad. I'll be like, "What do you mean you don't understand that? It's so obvious. Like, of course. Like, how do you not know what this character is feeling at this moment? Of course." It's clear what she's feeling. Like, what's wrong with you? And again, she's like one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And then I'll put it away. And then she'll be completely right when I look back at it of,
Mm.
oh, it isn't clear what that character is feeling. And there is something going on with the tone that's really attached at that moment. So I can understand.
Yeah.
But, once you finally get to that place where people are connecting to it, where moments are landing, um, when people are creating their own meanings from it, it's
Mm.
so powerful. And I think that often actually happens more from sharing work out loud than does necessarily from getting published in and of itself. Because you get to actually hear your words. You get to actually feel other people responding to your words and potentially people coming up to you afterwards too. And I lead salons that are online, and people, I have people in the chat, Zoom while they're listening, just put in the chat the phrases or words, or lines that really move them. And so the whole chat, the whole time is just like on fire with just like
Uh,
all of these reflections of love and brilliance and moments of feeling moved. And then I send them to all the writers, so that they can have that, because what a privilege. We
yeah,
so rarely get that, to actually
yeah,
feel those real time places of resonance. But I think we all write because we want to understand something about ourselves, but also we want something about our inner world to be able to be communicated. Um, and it's pretty cool.
yeah. No, it really is. I had a personal experience with it in the memoir class I took with you. And I
Ooh,
remember you saying that of for the final class we all read a piece,
yeah.
and I remember you saying, I know you guys, most of you don't know this because you're not. A lot of us were newer. You're like, this is better than getting published. Like being
Mhm.
able to read in real time, get feedback. I mean, that was like one of the coolest nights of my year was
Mm,
being able to hear all these people share these stories, to instantly be able to say, whoa, like this really hit me and this was really cool, and then also being able to share the work that I had written was like so cool, because it's like, God, it felt cool coming out, but I don't know, maybe this is all gonna not land. And it was like you sort of finish and you look up and everyone's smiling and like
mhm,
like, oh yeah, I was like, oh, you did get it, or maybe you did,
mhm.
you can't ever get it in the way that I did, and that's what's cool about it, is you're making your own meaning, you're getting your own you know uh your own meaning, your own story out of it. And since then, it's been a few months now. If I write something that I feel good about, I'll call a friend and read it to them.
Oh, what's that been
Yeah.
like? What have
It's
their
been,
thoughts been?
well, it's almost universally been like I made one of my buddies tear up. I've called Elizabeth and read some poems that I've written, and
Mm,
our little joke is uh, the sunscreen got in my eyes, which is a way of saying it made me tear up.
mm.
And she's made me tear up plenty of times with her writing too. And it's yeah, getting back to the connection, like you were saying, one of the real big goals of that creative process of writing is connecting with uh, other people and other stories, and in the way that um, the writing can inform the rest of your life in such a cool way, and that you can have that, like you were talking about. We look at language like math a lot. I
Mhm.
feel like we can look at our memories like math. It's like, this happened,
Oh
this
yeah.
person had this opinion about it, I had this opinion about it, I was right, they were wrong, or they were right and I was wrong, right? And it's this very linear thing. And
Yeah.
something about learning about telling stories and writing about stories, you go, oh, that's just one version of the story. That's one way to make meaning out of this thing that happened. And it like opens you up to, let's make a new meaning, let's
Yes.
experiment with a different perspective. And some of the cool exercises we did in the class was like some sort of pivotal point in your life and then writing it from another person's perspective. That was
Mm.
so profound to me. And it's something I'll do even just driving in silence, of like, okay, I had this, really intense interaction with a person or a group of people. Let me just shift into my boss's perspective. Let me just shift into
Mm.
this person's perspective. And it totally rearranges the meaning of this thing and almost universally lightens it a lot, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So,
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah, I love that one. And yeah, I think that I think another thing that I think it's so true, what you said about it being us treating our memories as having a really like we have a story about things, um and we're very, 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 very attached to whatever it is. So yes, whatever you can do to change up the perspective. And then also I think that often those stories lose, we don't account for the ways that looking like that the distance that we've traveled
Mm-hmm.
since that memory
Mm-hmm.
completely changes it too, right? That we have all of this new information, we have like all of these, we have this much larger, you know, like realm of meaning making, to be able to relook at that memory or that story and to see it in a different way. Um, it's like when we share about often, our greatest heartbreaks or traumas, we're like right back in there. We're right back in this person destroyed me, this thing happened, and this is what it means. And it's so important to that, to that person in that moment to have that feeling, right? That feeling is probably so true and probably so scary and is so necessary to hold on to the intensity of. But with more time, there's the ability to put it into a different kind of context and to take a different meaning. And I think often to see, what that moment also makes possible too, to see it as something that's generative of something that creates something rather than just something that happened to you, something that, that marked you, and I know some of these are traumatic memories, but it doesn't have to just be that. um, I think that, yeah, we're often very set and this is what happened and this is what it meant, but it's, it gets to be, we get to tell new stories. We get,
Yeah.
like you said, we get to tell new stories. And it's so liberating. And it's hard. It's so
Yeah. Yeah.
humbling. It
Yeah.
takes, for me, it takes years, with a single story to like
Mm-hmm.
actually take it through that whole process of actually finding that transformative power in it. That it's not just, I'm not just stuck in that place of this is what happened, where I actually realize it. But that's why it's so cool, because it also changes your life to have that different understanding and to have to really reckon with it.
Mm-hmm.
um I feel really differently about, like, it really, it's almost, it really is kind of like wrestling with the angel, like you really wrestle
Yeah.
with it and you're changed by the experience. So
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm thinking more and more, we have to at least, and you don't have to go too deep into it if you don't want to, or you can.
yeah,
You talk about writing from the body. I think you even have a class called that, right?
yeah,
Writing
I've
the
got like
body.
a couple variations.
Okay, so I
Yeah.
just read it the other day. Is it a double entendre? Writing the body. You could also say like you're writing it, like you're like the body was ill or something, and
Mhm.
you're making it right. Was that on purpose or?
Oh, um, um, no,
Okay.
not, I don't think of it so much as a double entendre. I want to think of more about that. Um, though I did come up with somebody, there was something about, um, well, I think that there is something about writing when we think about the RIGHT and the, what we are sort of, um, I think that there is something there in that
Mm-hmm.
of, in almost to what we were just talking about around
Yeah.
what you get to rewrite, in both meanings of it. You rewrite the story on the page and then you rewrite your understanding of it.
Mm-hmm.
But with the body, yeah, I'm happy to say a little bit about what I mean by that. So,
Please.
um, what I mean is a couple different things. So I think writing the body is a process. It's a really tuning into sensations, to that feeling, sensing self that's so alive, really everywhere below the neck that we
Mm,
forget about. It's
yeah.
really abandoning that analytical approach to writing that we're talking about of it's all in your head. You just have to do it. You just have to get it right. You just have to translate it, or solve the formula. But so it's a process that really is like those deep breaths, noticing what's happening, and just beginning to tune into the world that's there. So that's step one. You kind of can't do it without starting there. Um, it's a cool thing, when you practice yoga or you even just go for a run, or just even the ways when like how sometimes, you're like out, you're folding laundry even, and the idea comes to you because your body is doing something. Um, so even those types of things of just bringing the body into the creative process can be really helpful. And then the second is that it shows up on the page. So it's that I think that writing from the body really transmits. It really is what allows my experience to speak to your experience. Because I can say I feel sad, and it doesn't necessarily have a lot, like it, we can accept it, right? Like we all know what it's like to be sad. But, if I really describe the experience, the embodied experience of what my sadness or my character sadness is in that moment, is it the ache in a shoulder blade? Is it is it this heaviness in a stomach? Is it a um a pulsing wrist? I don't know, that's coming to me. Right? They all have different feelings. And the more that I talk about it, you'll begin to feel it in your own body too. So when we're talking about the fact that we want our writing to actually be felt by another person, writing the body is one of the most powerful ways to do that. And when we talk about visceral writing, it's usually because something's really gross. Right? Like when someone writes something really intense, it's usually like, oh, that was so visceral.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
But like it doesn't just have to be the gross experiences, I mean, it can be, but that's why they're powerful, because it's the body. So that's the second meaning. And the third meaning, the first way that I teach and think about writing the body is, what does it mean to actually put together a story that is informed by the body? So what does it look like to tell the story, the ways that I can tell an entire story of my life by just talking about memories of my throat? And for me, that's because the throat is the cross section of so many different places in my life: my singing, my voice, my relationship to consent, all these times I felt choked, literally and metaphorically. And it tells this bigger story, and all of us have those places. And I have several. Like it's not like it's just there. That's just, that's my big one. But if I talk about, I noticed lately that like I lift my feet, like I lift my ankles oftentimes when I'm like in a meeting or talking to people, and I just started to notice this. And then I started thinking, like, what's that about? And I started writing about it, and I realized there's so much being held there. There's so much resistance and not being allowed to settle. It brings back all these memories of doing ballet as a kid. All of these feelings of it isn't safe to just be really planted here. And it's so unconscious. But if I just tell all these stories of these moments when my ankles are lifted off the floor, it begins to tell something so much bigger. So it actually gives you a way to talk about something, to actually like bring a story together, which is really nice because structure is really fucking hard.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
So
It's
that's a
nice
whole
to.
other conversation, but
Yeah. Yeah.
those are some
Yeah.
thoughts.
Sometimes taking something as seemingly simple as just a physical sensation and being able to
Yeah.
structure around that, everything above the neck would say, no, there's no way that there's a whole story there. But that's why
Yeah.
I love your idea of everything from the neck down. I thought of a lot while you were saying that. I should have taken notes, but I want to do a shout out to Valerie Cheney. This is one of my favorite podcasters. She's married to Pete Holmes, who's a famous comedian, and they do a podcast. You'd love it. I should send you one. They do a podcast
Mhm.
every Friday called "We Made It Weird," where they just talk to each other for an hour. And she says, I think she might have got this from her teacher, but let the body solve what the mind can't.
Mm.
And it's a really good mantra of like, whenever you have something that seems like you can't solve, some
Mhm.
piece of anxiety, anger, whatever it is, it's because you're trying to solve it from the neck up, right?
Mhm.
And there's things that are outside of this head's pay grade, right? It's actually the body's a lot better suited to solve these things. So is it going to yoga? Is it going for a run? Is it taking a deep breath? Is it laying down and putting a weighted, blanket on yourself and
Mhm.
letting your body know that it's safe, and
Mhm.
I love throwing uh, this writing from the body as another technique in there of,
Mhm.
I did the exercise with you, and I wrote about my hands,
Mhm.
and it's like, this was
I
months ago.
remember
Not
that.
that was what I read to a few people.
Mhm.
It's changed my relationship to my hands. I can, like, if I have, you know, I got one of my fingers smashed. I had to go to the emergency room a few months back, and they just always felt like these very, because I work in construction, these very like vulnerable little things that are just out there that can get,
Mm.
crushed at any point. And I have like just sore hands from years of working with them and stuff. And when I used to just go like, I had this ethereal feeling of vulnerability or whatever, but through that exercise and coming back to that and writing more about it, I was like, oh, it's not ethereal. It's right here. It's in my hand.
Mhm.
It's in my body. It's in my nervous system. And like, just like that alone has been actually, life
Mhm.
changing. And, just one little aspect. So I love everything you had to say. I love the idea of, again, using that as a practice and a way in to,
Mhm.
uh, to the story that your body is telling. I'm sure you've at least heard of, probably read, The Body Keeps the Score.
Mhm.
Yeah, a
Yeah.
beautiful, example. Like you're talking about, retelling stories, making new meaning out of memories. If something's in the body, you can try to make a new story up in the mind, in the thoughts all day, and the body's like, no, sorry, we know what what happened. We know what this trauma is. So
Yeah.
sometimes a way in is this idea of writing from the body. Let's go into those feelings and just write about what this feels like, and what the
Yeah.
sensations are like, and what memories come up when I start diving into those feelings and the sensations. And so I think that's a great gift.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, it's completely changed my life. It's completely changed my writing. And I love, I mean, it's the coolest thing to get to guide other people through it because, whether you're a writer who, has all the credentials that a writer is quote supposed to have, or you've never written before, writing from the body gives everybody this place where they discover things that they had no idea were possible to write. It's just this site of constant meaning making. And I think it also speaks to, the ways that just like no story can just be, no story is a single thread. Um, no, no story is single faceted. Um, the as much pain as we might associate with a particular place, it has to also have many other meanings too. So it also
Yeah.
gives this place to really, um, yeah, to really keep pushing. I'm like twisting a dial. That's, I guess, what I think about a lot too. Of because all that complexity of meaning making is already inherently there. So it really gives us this beautiful space to reckon with that, to challenge our ideas about something being only about pain or only about suffering or only about um, victimization, um, and also get to see that whatever your body is also carried you through. And so then also then it creates the possibility for actually like a larger story too, because
Yeah.
we want to be putting those things in conversation for it to really um, have meaning.
Yeah.
I think we don't want to just, it's not just about telling stories of our pain. It's what do we actually create from it. And that's I mean, I think that's the exciting part of it all, but it's not straightforward how to do that. But I think the body really provides the
Channels.
way,
Yeah.
one way. Yeah,
Yeah.
reliably.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool. Okay. So, I don't want to take your entire evening. You've been great. You've already knocked it out of
This
the
is
park.
fun.
This is fun. Yeah. See, I told you. Just jazz, just improvisational, and cool
Yeah.
stuff comes up. We already got, more than a dozen beautiful golden nuggets. So,
Mm,
I would like to finish with, and
yeah.
don't let me forget. and please send me links to all your stuff so that anyone that listens or watches this can find you and possibly take a class with you. I would highly recommend. Life-changing, whether or not you consider yourself a writer. I didn't consider myself a writer when I started, and taking it as part of what has shifted my identity into I'm a writer. I'm not a professional, but it's a part of my life now, which is really cool. So yes, please send me all those links. I'll link them to the podcast. I know you also do editing. You're right. Yeah, you do professional editing. You're editing for our mutual friend Elizabeth, and she has nothing but praise, and she thinks that you're and she's been writing for a long time. She thinks you're a real special find in the editing world. So if anybody out there is listening,
I mean,
any writers out there looking for,
right
on, any writers out there looking for an editor, if we could finish with just, I was going to say, I think we answered the question, what is writing, over the course of the podcast. So we don't have to come back to it.
Cool. I don't have to, I couldn't distill what it is. Also, this is my process. I mean, I do think it's worth saying that I think that also what happens over the course of continually showing up to writing, what makes you like, I think that the maturing that happens as a writer is mostly about knowing your own process really intimately. So like, I know I have to talk all around something and I have to go in many different directions, and then I'm going to find my way back to it. So I totally could not answer straight on the question of what is writing, but
but we answered it over the course of the podcast, I think, thoroughly. Yeah. So if we could finish with, you have a really, it sounds from afar like you're working on a really interesting and beautiful book right now. If you could, whatever you're willing to share about that, speaking of like meaning making and reframing a story and a family and all of that, it sounds like all of that is in there in a really cool, juicy way. So anything you would like to share about what you're working on right now, I think would be a cool way to close.
Sure. I had a feeling. I had a feeling we were going here. Yeah, sure. So my book in progress, I'm working on for about 4 years now, 4.5, is a reimagining of an ancestral story from my own lineage. It is the story of an immigrant family that comes to America from Eastern Europe, Jewish family in the early 1900s, and wants so desperately to have safety, prosperity, closeness, and for a different kind of life to be possible. And then over the course of the book, and it's told in 4 different voices from each of the different family members, the family completely comes apart. And it's really about, what this family will sacrifice in order to belong. And it turns out they're actually willing to sacrifice their family in order to be part of the structures that are required in America. So it really centers around one character in particular, a 16-year-old girl named Ida, who has this gift. She has this choir of voices that come to her that she understands as angels, but they must be dark angels because nobody else can hear them. They're not speaking in a language that anyone else understands. And it puts her constantly at odds with the world. And so over the course of the book, she tries to come out about something that's happened to her, something, an act of violence within the family, and the family, which also includes them completely misunderstanding her gift, and the family shuts her away. And so that's what happened in real life, where things are different in the books. I'm not giving anything away, but in real life, she's sentenced to a psychiatric facility where she spends the rest of her life. And nobody in my family knew that she existed. And I think a lot about about that, about how both it's a erasure that suggests that she was unimportant, but actually the erasure is because she was actually incredibly important. And
Yeah.
um, what we do, what we do to people, to women, to people who are marginalized, people who don't fit in, whose stories we do not want to hear. And the ways that trauma and mental illness and prophecy are so much more interconnected than we want to think. And our social norm right now is call it mental illness and shut it away.
Share away, don't look at it.
So that's the really happy story that I am writing.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's so beautiful. If I mean, the story alone and your summary, and I feel like you're doing really important work by telling this story. And I resonate the
Mm,
the analogy of hearing voices and of these
mm,
choirs of angels and them being interpreted as dark and hey, this is something we don't know how to deal with, so we're gonna hide it, we're gonna lock it away, and that there's a human life that's gonna suffer from this is the sacrifice we're willing to take as a family because we can't face our own shadow really in a
yeah.
way. It's so beautiful, and I think the world needs it, is gonna love a story like this. So
Thank you. I feel like, I mean, I found everybody, it feels like everyone I talk to now has a mad woman aunt in the attic,
yeah,
or
yeah,
has two, family members who never speak to each other and who split the family apart. And there's so much to all of this. There's so much socio-political, historical, cultural, interpersonal
yeah,
layers to all of it. They're really fascinating, complex stories, and they're doing so much, to maintain the social order. So
yeah,
yes, my hope is that people connect with it and begin to ask different stories of their own lineages
yeah.
and to kind of challenge the stories that they've been told about why things are the way they are.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not gonna be able to help but do that for people. So that's so awesome that you're doing such great work on so many levels, personally, creatively, and then teaching, and like you said, having spaces open for people to do readings and be showered with love and connection from the listeners. So doing so much good stuff, Aria. Keep it up, please. And this was a lot of fun. I have this feeling, I don't remember what philosopher said it, but all good conversations are left unfinished. So I definitely feel like we could talk for many, many more hours about a lot of cool stuff, but we covered a lot of really cool ground the time that we did talk. So that was a lot of fun, and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's really such a pleasure
Right
and
on.
an honor. I love talking about this. I'm so happy that writing has allowed you to really bloom in all these different ways and that you've stuck with it. That's so cool.
Right on. Yeah, thank you. I had a moment. I've brought this up to Elizabeth a couple times in the last class. I had wanted to write about psychedelic experience that I
Oh
had,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it was a mushroom trip, and uh, I tried several times, and I was like getting ready to give up, and it was the week before the last class, and I just had this moment, this like little inner breakthrough where I was like, oh, I think I know how I can do it. And I sat down and just busted it out,
Mhm.
in 15, 20 minutes. And I shared it. And the moment was this with you, where you go, after I'd shared it, you go, you wanted to do this hard thing, you didn't know how to do, and then you
Mhm.
did it.
Yeah.
And all the many bits of wisdom you shared in the 6 week class, that moment of you saying you did it, like, stuck with me the most. It's like, yeah, I did do
Mhm.
it. And there's so much in that of like not giving up and believing in yourself, and all the things we've been talking about. You have something worthy to say. Don't be discouraged. Give it another shot, and you know get it down on the page and share it with people. And it's one of the coolest things we can do. So
Yeah, yeah, no, totally. I totally remember. I don't remember saying that specifically, but I do remember being like, because lots of people, when people are like, I don't know how to tell the story, and then they're just like agonize, like, I do that. It's like, they make it a really intellectual question. But that's also the cool thing about showing up regularly, where you just kind of get over your fear of it. It's like, okay, I'm gonna write
Yeah.
anyway. I might as well try this thing. Like you know. So it was beautiful. It was so beautiful. I'm so glad you were in the class. I'm so glad you're writing. I can't wait to see what it turns into. You're gonna keep me posted, right?
Of course, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm going to be taking another class at some point for sure.
Please
If,
do. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm figuring out my fall schedule now.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll definitely keep you posted.
Please
That'd
do.
be great.
Yes,
I would love
listeners,
that.
please check out Aria and join us in the class. It'll be fun. Okay.
Yay.
I'm going to stop recording. Thank you.
Mhm.